Starting a couple minutes late here on the live stream today. Thanks for joining. And it looks like there might be a possible problem with some of the stream keys over on Restream software. So not sure how much longer I'm going to put up with some of the issues that I've been having with that. I may have to find a different solution. Hope you guys had a great weekend. We're going to go ahead and get started here for a moment. In a moment. So what I want to do first, and I've got a different layout, different background, and I sprayed this not long ago. So I'm going to tape it, and I'll move it back into the frame here in a moment. Zoom out just a little bit so you can see just a little bit more, but we'll go ahead and tape it. But I've also got pencils laid out over here. So these are the pencils that I'm using, and I've kind of pulled out my lighter portrait set right over here so that they're handy. Reposition the camera, the overhead camera, so that we've got a square angle. The aspect ratio is lined up, I think, a lot better than what it used to be. So that's something that just kind of bothers me when I look back at some of the other streams that I've done, and when I see other people doing streams. I want to make sure that the aspect ratio is correct. All right, so make sure I've got chat going over here. Yeah, so Restream, the software that I use, they reported that they were under a DDoS attack. So if you're able to see the stream, let me know. Ah, there we go. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks for watching over on Twitter. So if anybody is on Facebook or YouTube, and thanks for the comment, by the way, but if you're on Facebook or YouTube, let me know if you're able to see the stream. I would appreciate that. So let me lift this up, get it in the right spot here. Probably right in here, be good. There we go. Okay, so it is Monday. We just released the Colored Pencil podcast this morning. And so Ramona is here. Hey, Ramona, thanks so much. And Ramona's over there on Facebook. Latest podcast is really great. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. See, I never know because sometimes when I'll get emails from people whenever I do a marketing podcast, and to be real honest, some people hate marketing podcasts whenever you're talking about art marketing and doing commissions and things like that. I get some feedback once in a while that's like just kind of angry. Not kind of, it is angry. And so some people love them, is my point, and some people hate whenever we talk about anything like that, because it's a split audience, and I understand that. Some people are only doing art as a hobby, and then there's some of us who like to do commissions, and we like to, you know, push it in different ways to sell our work. So, all right, let's see if we can get this all taped up. Maybe the sides. I got to be careful about not putting my head in the overhead camera because I repositioned it a little bit, and to square it up a little bit better, it's kind of in my way, to be real honest, but I think it's a better angle for you all to see it. And it's not in the frame here for my face, I think, which is better as well. Okay, so I'm going to just put a little bit of tape over here. I don't always need to just tape this 100 different ways and have it all sealed off. For me, that just sometimes doesn't work. If you want to get a little bit further out with some of your work, then it just makes it a little better. You feel like you have a little more freedom, or I do. Okay. So it's really sad what's going on in the world, but at least we've got, you know, our art, right? Absolutely. Ramona just commented over there on Facebook that, yeah, she thinks that that the virus, you know, will change things. And, yeah, I mean, for better or worse, I think that's right. It's going to change the landscape for everyone, you know, but certainly for us as artists. And, you know, if we're going to be doing commission work or work that we want to sell ourselves through our own site or through Etsy or something like that, then I think the more prepared we are, and like you pointed out, Ramona, building up your inventory, it's a great time really to do that. What else are we going to do, right? We're going to stay at home anyway, so we're here at home. We might as well take advantage of it. Okay. I think I'm situated here. I'm not sure if we're streaming to YouTube again. That just did not work. Thanks, Ramona. I appreciate that. Misery loves company, huh? No, I'm teasing. It's like commiserating together. You know, it's not so bad. I mean, it as far as I'm talking about just being stranded at home. I know you probably agree with this. I mean, it's like there's a whole lot of worse things, right? It's not much different, actually, for most of us as artists. Get this sharpened real quick here. So one of the pencils that I really love to use on portraits is buff titanium. Caran d'Ache buff titanium. So instead of white, instead of thinking, okay, I'm going to use white, buff titanium is a great one to use. Also, this color, what is it, brown ochre, right? Yeah, brown ochre 10%. It just adds a nice lighter tonal value for some of the lighter areas. And if you haven't noticed, I'm one of those people that I like to go a little dark for a while, and then especially on a sanded paper. It's a little more challenging on Stonehenge. But on sanded paper, you can do it quite easily. You can go pretty dark, and then you can push it back in that lighter direction. And when you do that, you just get a nice soft transition from the dark and the light values that just fade in and out. You know, that it creates that curve and that dimension. I think that we want, or at least that I want. So if you look at buff titanium, it's a very, make sure they didn't change the name on me now. No, buff titanium. It's a, once in a while they'll do that, you know, they'll change the names of some of these colors from time to time. But it's a very light color, but it is nearly like an olive brown or a brown ochre. But they don't call it that. You know, they just call it buff titanium. And but if you wanted to really compare it, if we put it side by side with brown ochre, I mean, it's nearly the same nearly the same hue, just a lighter value. And in my opinion, it's nearly like, you know, if this is brown ochre 10%, well then the buff titanium, I kind of feel like it's nearly like a 5% buff titanium color. It's so similar to that color. All right, so I want to build up these values over here. And when you get to a certain point and you're drawing along, you're trying to shift the tones of the skin values, and you feel like that you need a smooth, soft transition. Sometimes it helps to, you know, because I don't always do this. Sometimes it'll help, though, to rest your hand on your project or off of your project and then just lightly build it up like that. But if you're careful, you don't always have to do that. You know, you can just float your hand. I don't know if you can tell that, but I'm just floating my hand. And I don't need to always rest it on the project. Now, I couldn't do that when I started out. I just learned how to do that over time. I was too unsteady with it. And really, it was a matter of, I think, coordination, too. Because you build up that coordination with your drawing process and how you approach your particular technique when you draw. Okay. All right. I do want to look and see if we're streaming over to YouTube. It hasn't been cooperating lately, and I don't know. It looks like we might be, so not real sure. So if you are on YouTube and watching the live stream, give me an emoji or a hi or something. Hasn't worked the last 2 weeks. I thought it was working last week. Found out after we were done that it didn't. So there you go. Oh, okay, Ramona. She couldn't find it on YouTube. That's probably the case then. It's probably probably not working. So somehow they broke their API with Restream, and hasn't been corrected, and they just haven't. I know they're focused on other things at the moment because of the DDoS attack that they're going through, but they haven't updated and said whether they fixed it. So I'm presuming it wasn't fixed. DDoS attack, like probably what they're dealing with at that level, probably needs all hands on deck. So anyway, but it's not helping me much. I may just use a different solution if I can find one. Or I may just separate the live streams. I might just do a Facebook live stream and then at a different time do a YouTube one. I haven't made up my mind yet, but that is an option. Now, where I've used cream and white and other colors that are slightly more warm or have more of that glow and that yellowish ochre kind of tint, then this buff titanium will sort of dull that down. And so I just have to be aware of that. But what's good about the buff titanium is it's very close to white. It's not white, though. It's a very neutral kind of hue, like we talked about, very closely akin to that brown ochre 10%. And I can go on top of that then with another color, and it's not going to make some kind of weird shift in my color palette. So I could go on top of it with a yellowish color, some kind of ochre, or some kind of anything within the pink or red area, and it would work just fine. There we go. Okay. I'm so excited, and I cannot wait to come back in here in this nose area and use a very bright pink in certain areas. And right in there is one of those areas. And I can't wait to do that. It's just one of those things that just adds a lot of realism to some of the areas where you've got highlights, where you've got sun or any kind of light hitting something, and it makes for a very realistic transition from light to shadow. But you know how it is. It's like before you go on a big trip, or before you open gifts or something like that, you get all excited because of the anticipation, right? The anticipation sometimes is even better than the actual thing itself. Like if you're planning a big trip, and then you are planning and leading up to it, you're thinking about it and getting ready for it. Once you're on the trip, that excitement, that piece of it is gone, because you're on the trip, and that's what you've been wanting to. That's what you're leading up to. But there's something kind of sad about going on the trip, and you don't have that anticipation any longer. And I don't know. I, for one, I love that anticipation. And so it's the same thing with getting to the end of the drawing, and you know that there's some things that are going to be exciting that you're going to be able to do towards the very end of the drawing that you can't do until you get to that spot. Okay. That might have been a very weird analogy, but I hope it made sense. Where I've got a soft, very, very soft and subtle transition from light to shadow. And I don't want an abrupt line or a separation in value by an edge, right? Because I want an edge over here on the cheek. I don't want an edge up here when I'm going into a shadow. Even if I'm seeing an edge sometimes on a contour form, or on a form that is part of the same plane, then I still don't want to do that. Most of the time I don't want to do it, because it will make more sense to make it a soft and subtle transition, like right in here, from the top of the eyebrow to to the forehead. Now over here, where I've got this orbital structure here casting a shadow, then it does make sense over here. But if I have a hard edge right here, that can start to look a little bit funny. You know, it can be done well, I'm not saying that, but it can look kind of weird though too. And so I want to try to avoid those kinds of things. Now, especially over here on this side, if I ever get as bright as I am over here, and it may look like I'm nearly that bright over here. I've gone darker though to begin with, and so now I'm brightening it up a little bit. But I don't really ever want it to be quite as bright as this side over here. And I certainly don't want hard edges anywhere over there, because this is all a contoured reflected light area inside all of these shapes and planes on the face and head. And so if it's a reflected light and it's ambient light that's not direct, then it's not going to have hard edges at all, right? Logically, it won't. So I'm wanting those to always be very, very soft over here on this side. On the left side, that is, over here. So as I go into a reflected light area within a shadow, that's also going to be a very, very soft transition. But then as I am going in the other direction, you know, I put on all of those dark areas first, all the shadows, if you will, first. And so now I'm coming out of those shadows from a highlight area, so it's very bright over here on this edge, this form edge right here. It's a hard edge, right? And so I'm creating a smooth transition from this bright area to the rest of the shadow in this particular area, like the form right here of the cheek. So when I compare that to this other side, then I want this to have a slower transition. This can be a quicker, faster transition to a dark shadow, a darker shadow. Okay. It is brighter right in there. It's brighter on this side just slightly in certain areas than on the other side. Okay. I want to look around, see where I need to go. It's not bad right there, right now. I'll probably leave it the way it is. I can push this highlight over here and lengthen it just a little bit more into this shadow on the forehead. The best perspective for looking at your drawing and your reference would be to have a 90-degree angle, right? And for a long time, that's what I had on this drawing, as I had the camera, overhead camera, repositioned in a different spot. But now, as I'm getting closer to being done with this drawing, then I've repositioned the camera. I'm not looking at this myself in a 90-degree angle, but that's okay because I'm also not looking at the reference over here to my left in a 90-degree orientation either. And I've already got the structure of where most of the things need to go. There's still a little bit more work that I need to do on the eyes and make sure those look a little more accurate and the same. as you know, the one on the left there needs a little more work than the one on the right, but my point is that I've got the structure in place now, and so I can look at this in from a different angle, and it will be fine. Okay, I'll zoom in just a little bit here so you can see it a little bit better, and you will notice a little bit of texture up there in the forehead. By the time we're done, I don't want that. I don't want there to be some kind of odd texture in this little girl's forehead. So I just want to be aware of it, that I still have that. A little bit of reflected light right back up here on the upper side of that orbital structure there. Right? Makes sense. Over here as well, not quite as much though. A little softer. This little area right here is really bothering me. I'll have to fix that a little later. Let's see. But one of the important things is, when you're doing portraitures, to not get overwhelmed and not beat yourself up about things. To stay calm and work through it slowly, methodically, and know what you know where you're headed, so it will work out. But sometimes, if you think about all the things that you need to do, it can get a little overwhelming. So I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that I'm focusing in one area at a time, and that I'm not just overwhelming myself with all the things that still need to be done. Okay, that's not what I want. I want this brown ochre 10%, and I need another color. Maybe the sepia red for the darker shadow area right in here. Yeah, that's good. I want to stay within the tonal structure of what I've already got down here. You know, I think about these hues, the colors that I've already been using, and I don't want to depart from that a whole lot, or I'll have, some issues. So, put down a lot of this darker color here first, and then I can come back in the other direction. This needs to be darker, and then I'll go back in the other direction with lighter hues in just a moment. Okay. Go in this direction towards the dark value. There we go. Okay. And then, as this cheek starts to move away from that smile line right there, it's a little bit brighter. There's a little bit of a contour right there. And it moves up, and I can tell already I'll probably have to put a little more pink in there. Getting off the frame there. Let me scoot that back for you. There we go. All right. Okay. So again, we're going back and forth, dark and light values. Okay, let's see. The shadow right in here in the mouth is very dark. Okay, so now I'll come back in this direction. Yeah, I'm sure I'm not streaming to YouTube right now. Looks like it's only on Facebook, so if you're watching this then through the upload that I put out there later on, then just know that, yeah, there's probably going to be some changes in the future. I know I had more of you guys watching on YouTube anyway, but for whatever reason, the software is not being very consistent with that API that is needed for the YouTube connection. Move back down here. Okay. This is one of those areas that I really love right here. May sound kind of odd. I don't know. If you do portraits, then you probably know what I'm talking about, though. But just right under the nose, under that shadow, where that nostril is, there's an exciting little area that sometimes grabs a little bit of light, and it's just right there. And it can be just a little bit brighter sometimes, especially in a reflected light area like this. So it's in the shadow, so there's some reflected light that gets back in there. And that's just a lot of fun, finding that, identifying it. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see here. Make sure I can see my reference for some of these things. The eyes are something that I just continually will go back to. I just keep going back to the eyes to try to make sure that, you know, each time I do a pass through on the eye, I want to try to make sure it's looking better than it did the last time that I was working on the eye. I keep glancing over here at my screen because I can see it actually even better over there than I can from this vantage point that I'm using to draw from. I mean, it's fine, but it's a little bit skewed a little bit. But, you know, I figure I can deal with that now at this point in the drawing process. And I'd rather you guys watching be able to see a little bit more, because I think it will help you to see things better than having it perfect for me and having it skewed for you. Hope that makes sense. All right, let's do this. I need to smooth that part out. There we go. I've got to make sure that I get my headache medicine filled today. I've been dealing with a headache for 3 days. I get these cluster headaches, and I kept just just busy, and I kept putting it off to call the doctor and get my prescription refilled, because there's nothing else that works for a cluster headache than a prescription. And I'm on the 3rd day, and it had to happen over a weekend. Usually I can call and get it filled that day, but I've gone for a long time without getting one, and so I was kind of excited about that. I thought maybe I'm rid of those things. And it's not so bad today, this morning. I wouldn't be here if it was awful. It was completely awful Saturday. Started about Friday night, but Saturday it was terrible. But once in a while, if you deal with migraines or cluster headaches, then you know what I'm talking about. But once in a while, it will ease up during, it's an episodic thing where you'll have it for a while, and then it'll come and go. You'll have it for maybe an hour, cluster headache in particular, and then it'll ease up for a little bit. And then you may go for 40 minutes to 2 hours without it, and then it'll strike again. So it just comes and goes. It's just a weird thing. But you look like death warmed over, because I have the traditional symptoms with it. The head hurts on one side, the eye gets beet red on the one side, and then you have drainage in both the eye and the nose. It's an ugly sight. And then it'll just all of a sudden just ease up, and I can kind of feel when that's about to happen. It's just a weird thing. Okay, you're welcome for the overshare. We'll get back to the drawing here. Okay. Just looking for the light areas, and making sure I don't overpower some of the shadows in here, because I'm inside a shadow right now. So I have to remember that. I don't want this to be, the light areas to be too dominant. So if I do that, I'll have to go back all over everything and, redraw a lot of that. Okay, there is this yellowish color, and I can't remember which pencil I used just to push some dark value in there very quickly, that I did not like. So I wanted to make sure I got rid of that. There we go. This area of the upper eyelid is very dark. It's not very bright at all. A little bit of some uneven surface going on here that's starting to fight with me. So I'm going to roll up my sleeves and play hardball with some of that. So we'll come back in here with this 50% burnt sienna, very, very lightly, just glazing it on and pushing into this shadow as I get closer to and this is going to be a lot darker for a little bit, so don't worry about that. That's the way I want it to appear for the moment. But it's pushing that shadow from a lighter value to a dark value as we get right there into that crease. Okay, now we can come back on top of that with this darker value. Use a little bit of tracking, just restating lines over and over, a little bit right there, and then pushing that away again from that area. Okay, not quite there yet, but it's better. Better than it was. Come back in here with burnt ochre 10% and smooth that out. Kind of brush it. Hope that makes sense. There we go. That's what we want right there. For now. So I can leave that alone and for a moment and not let it bother me so much. Now I want to look at it and look all around there. Make sure nothing else is looking odd at the moment, and use this pencil in a few other areas around the eye so that there's some continuity. And it did smooth it out quite a bit, at least from the way that I'm looking at it. Looks a little bit better. Okay. And this side does need to be darker over here, just slightly. So it's moving into a darker area up here. Then it comes back out. Now remember, I can have more of an abrupt change in values at the edge of a cast shadow than I can inside, further inside of a shadow area. So all the shading over here needs to be very subtle, both in and out of dark values and light values. But where I've got a hard edge over here on a cast shadow, then I can have some sharper contrast. All right. So this needs to be, I need to sharpen that. See that area right in here for that crease needs to be a little bit darker than what it is. But as it moves away from this, it can be lighter right there. But I need to smooth that out first. I can come back in here with that burnt ochre 10% and smooth that out. Just smooth it out. There we go. Get rid of that line right there. That doesn't go out quite that far. There we go. Okay, now that is, I'm liking that a lot because that is getting more of those subtle, soft shadow transitions in there. Sometimes you'll hear somebody say, especially like a commission piece, we'll say, wow, I like the highlight in the eye, or something like that. And the reason why they can enjoy the highlight in the eye is because all the other elements were done with care, so that you can enjoy some of those other areas. And it takes a little more focus on some of the other areas for some of the simpler things, like a highlight in the eye, to be noticeable. Okay, that's too bright. And let's see. Tone that down just a little bit. There we go. It needs to be a little sharper right in there where the iris is, but I'm not worried about that at the moment. I'm trying to work on the shading right in here. All of that blue and violet that we used earlier that stood out and was such a sharp contrast is totally hidden, right? It's influenced some of the areas that we're looking at, but you can't see it anymore. You don't know where it is. Or I certainly don't. But it does influence these other layers on top. But some of it we're going to put back in there. We're going to suggest a little bit more of blue and violet in there. Okay. Move this down. Remember, I can have a sharper contrast over here. So I have that highlight going on. That's a little bit too bright. I got a little carried away over there. I can see that now. But over on this side, remember, I can have a little bit sharper contrast than what I do over in this side over here. So I still need to work on getting this soft, subtle transition in the cheek and this area where I've got this smile line for the mouth, because I don't want it to be that dark. I think I fired that dark area in there very quick right before I finished, maybe last week or something like that, and just to remind myself I need to go back to that cheek. Okay. Now, one of the advantages you have if you're drawing and you're not drawing on camera is to move your drawing around. Don't just leave it in a static position like this. I'm doing this so that you can see it, but it's very helpful, though, to turn this on its side or even flip it upside down to be able to see some of those abstract shapes and values a little bit better. Okay, let me see here. And to get your hand in a more comfortable position for your stroke from time to time works better as well. Just to reposition your drawing surface. I'm so glad that I sprayed this. I would not have as much surface, I wouldn't have as much texture on this surface to work with as I do now. The pencil is adhering to the surface quite nicely. Okay. Now this, that was so bright right there. I don't want to see that. Right here as well. And come up like that. And probably this. There we go. Let's take a look. This might be enough for right now. All right. There's a little spot, though, right here. I want to make sure I get... So if I'm going to mess around with that little spot, I need to push the shadow then all the way up and then go in the other direction with my light value all the way back down. Okay. So, grab my brown ochre, 10%, and I'm going to use more of a horizontal stroke since I used the vertical one a moment ago. Very, very tight linear strokes to push that back down. There we go. I have to start thinking more about a smooth skin and a smooth transition. I'm getting to that point where I'm almost to the end of the drawing, and so I can't just come in here and use a rough and very hard hand to depict some of this, because I don't want that to be the texture that's seen in the skin. I want it to be very smooth. So I got to start thinking more like that whenever I'm laying these strokes down. Early on, I don't worry about that on sanded paper. But as you get towards the finish line, then you've got to start thinking about that. Okay. All right, I like that. I like the way that that transition went. Okay, and right in here needs to build up just a little bit. Oh, those nice pink highlights that are reflecting back inside the skin. I don't have them here in my drawing yet, but I will. That's gonna be nice. Okay, well, let's see if we can do this. Just obscure that dark area just a little bit. I don't want it quite that dark. A little bit longer linear stroke. Brush all that just a little bit. And come back here with burnt ochre. There we go. A little bit better. All right. Okay. All right. I'm liking that, I think, for the moment. All right. Okay. I think we're going to go ahead and stop then right now. So I appreciate you coming over here and watching the drawing process. And if you have any questions, put those in the comments down below. And I hope you're having a great Monday. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.